All right, so so something is wrong with the pattern we were using, and this replace method isn't doing the job that I wanted it to. So I'm going to comment this part out. And instead, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing some work with grouping in this. So there's a very cool pattern I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to go to Rubular. Boo. So in this pattern, each of the digits here are put into a group, and you can see they're all put into groups. Match 1 is 1, 2, and 3. Match 2 is 1, 2, and 3. Each separated by optional /Ws, which are any non-word character. So by putting them into these groups, we can refer back to them. So I'm going to first replace my pattern with that. Oops, wrong. There we go.
Did that match the parentheses version too?
I do not know. We'll find out. So I'm going to sub-pattern, and instead of using this method here, I'm going to use another regex thing. And I'm going to use \1 followed by a dash, \2 followed by a dash, \3. Yeah. So if we go back to the Rubular real quick, we can see those slashes refer to these matching groups. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, take everything that matches this pattern, and then replace it with only the things in group 1 followed by a dash, only the thing in group 2 followed by a dash, and only the thing in group 3 followed by a dash.
So the grouping is done by the slashes before the D?
By the parentheses.
Oh.
So /D3 here is in parentheses, so /D3 and /D4. So let's see what this does with the tests. All right, we only have one failure there, so it looks like it didn't. Well, let's see. I'm guessing yeah, it was the parentheses version that gave it trouble in this case. So does not equal, because it looks like it passed. Oh, wait, there's, oh, no, wait, no. So it didn't pass for this particular version because we didn't account for the parentheses or a white space there. So, I don't know, I think.
It still captures the numbers, so all you'd have to do is just put in like what we had before the parentheses and
yeah.
White space. Minor.
Yeah, so we could do something like
the \parentheses question mark at the start.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What's the W?
W is any non-word character.
If we had a plus there. So it
maybe.
captures all the non-word like as part of the W.
Yeah. I don't know if we can chain a question mark and a plus together. I don't think it works that way necessarily. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Do you want to keep trying to crack this particular nut, or do you want to move on?
Was it parentheses for the hashtags?
No, it wasn't. We just, but it was in the commented thing that says that this should be a match.
Oh, okay. All right. I agree with Daniel.
Yeah. So
the gist of what's going on. We understand the process that's happening there. It's just
yeah.
that little edge case that's
yeah.
really
So just kind of going, last thing about regex is it is interesting. It's kind of like a puzzle. And I enjoy doing it, but occasionally you'll get things like this where it's like you'll find everything except one edge case. So I think with y'all's permission, I'm going to move on to the next part of this. And if any of you come up with a solution that gets the parentheses as well, let me know. I would love to see it.
I have a working solution if you want to look at it.
Who just said that? Sorry?
Richard.
Richard? Okay, we can take a look at, you want to, Richard? We can take a look at yours.
I put a pull request in.
Great. So you can take a look at that real quick before moving on. All right, so looking at yours, Richard, so you have a input string count and an array of bad numbers.
Those I actually forgot to comment out. I didn't need those, but I just pulled all the 3 digits. So that's the area code in the middle 3, and then I just appended the last 4 of the split array.
Interesting. And also saw Sunny also just posted something in the Slack channel of a pattern. So I'm seeing optional, so dot question mark, so an optional any character, then the group of 3. Let's put this out in here. 3, optional question mark slash dot question mark. So optional dot there, optional white space. Yeah, that's also a good pattern. Thank you. All right, cool. So these are definitely some options, but again, we have other things we need to get to, so I am going to move on now. But yeah, thank you all for taking this regex journey with me. All right, so next I would like to talk about our Stockpicker one. So how did people feel about Stockpicker? It's okay. Sorry, what was that?
I loved it.
You loved it. All right, so 1 okay, 1 loved it. Cool. So I'd like to go over this function, this challenge, but I would also like to do so in a way that lets us talk about some tools that might help us as we move forward into more difficult challenges. So before I do anything else, though, I'm gonna start this in Python. I'm just going to turn this into a unit test. Import unit test. Make a class called, so maybe Stockpicker test case. So now, like after all that OOP, this should start making a lot more sense of what we're doing exactly here. We can have our if name equals main. Yep. So unit test.main is what runs the thing. And technically, it would still work if we didn't have this if statement there. We could also just say unit test.main. But we keep that there because we only want it to run if we're running this file directly in case we end up exporting it someplace else. That's what that if name equals main protects us from. And so they have a bunch of things here that we can just kind of copy. So def, test returns best buy and sell days. Take self as an argument because it's a class method or an instance method. Self.assert. So we have a whole long list of assert methods that this thing gives us option to. In this case, assert equal will work, but they also have one called assert, if I can find it, assert list equal. So that's specifically for lists. So we might as well use it. I saw something in the chat real quick. Want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, okay. So we're asserting list equal. And then we could say, just kind of copy all of it, copy this. And the answer should be 1 and 4. Actually, we could just be able to did that wrong. And we can copy this list. Also, I noticed there's a missing parens. The answer for that one should be 0 and 4. So in the interest of time, let's just leave it at these two cases for now, and then we can add more as we go. We have a test case, which is more than enough for us to start going. All right, so let's pseudocode this out together. So I guess we should look at the requirements as well. That might be helpful. So we need to implement a method, Stockpicker, that takes in a list of stock prices, one for each hypothetical day. Its return of days representing the best day to buy and the best day to sell. Days start at 0. So the example they have, the best day to die would be at input 1 because the price is low. The best day to sell would be 4 because that's 15, so you make a profit of $12. So the idea is the first thing in the array is always going to be the day you buy. The second one's always going to be the day you sell because you need to buy before you can sell. You got to pay attention to edge cases, like when the lowest day is the last day or the highest day is the first day. Just make sure you translate the driver code and spec file to unit test. That's what we did. And that's the example again, same example. So we can't go to like day 1 and like buy on this day where it's 1 and sell on this day where it's 17 because that day's already passed. So let's pseudocode this out. So we defined a method called picker. Takes a list of prices. What comes next?
I would create a for loop.
Create a for loop?
Yeah.
Read and compare, to read through prices.
Yeah, create a for loop through prices. And for each price, what are we doing?
I'm comparing it to each other price.
So when you say compared to each other price, what do you mean?
Each other day's price. And I'm comparing if it's greater than.
Yeah, so you say if we have like, this is our day right here.
Yeah.
Then we're comparing it to every other day after it.
Yeah. I have 2 loops that are iterating through each day. One's nested in the other.
So we have a nested, so we could do a nested loop.
Actually, if we're doing a nested loop, I think it would be best to do a while loop so that we can keep track of the index for both loops.
So we could do a for loop or a while loop and nest. So we're talking about nested loops now. So maybe not worry about what kind of loop it is right now because this is just the pseudocode section.
Iterate through days.
Yeah, so loop over prices. And then within, like for each price, whether we're doing it with a while loop or a for loop, loop over other prices. Is that right? Is it just all the other prices or the prices that come after this one?
One's after.
Yeah, so
Or not that one.
Yeah.
Always after.
loop over
Yeah.
prices. Yeah, you can't go back in time.
So the one next to it.
All right, and then so we loop over. So we have our loop, like our today, that particular day, and then all the other days ahead of it. And what do we do then for each iteration of this inner loop?
You want to subtract from the original.
Mhm.
So we can see what the biggest
So it's like,
difference is
it's like subtract future price
from current.
from current price. And we subtract it, and then what do we do?
Compare that value and store it. That way you get another one bigger.
So we compare that.
Create a variable to
Mhm.
hold that.
Yeah, so we'll probably want to create a variable to hold on to what the best profit is.
Right.
So we could say max profit, my new super wrestler name. We could set that equal to 0 to start with. Then we could say if the difference is greater than max profit equals the difference. And then we keep on going through that, loop this loop within a loop over and over till we get to the end. And then we return max profit.
We need an array that shows the indexes of the
and
the cell days. So we need to create an empty array to start as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on that max profit is
so we need to add those indexes to by cell days. So by cell days is now equal to an array with current index and future index. And so at the end of the loop, we return by cell days at the end of loops, right?
So it seems like a lot of steps, right?
Yeah.
Especially in nested loop. But if we think about it, all we need to find is the lowest price you can buy it, the highest price you can sell it, right?
Maybe, but we have a problem, which is if the lowest, like for example, this one right here, the lowest day we can buy at happens after the highest day we could sell at.
Sure.
And we don't want to say, buy it 8 days from now and then sell it today.
Right.
So we need to be careful about
you
that.
start at the lowest, and it's only going to be 1 and 10 when actually the better value is between 3. Even though one's starting lower, so it can't be the lowest there either.
So that's something that's one of those cases where we need to make sure we're reading the instructions carefully, because it's very easy to say, take a list of numbers and then subtract the lowest one from the highest one. But we want to say it has to be find the greatest difference between 2 things in this array, provided that the second thing is after the first one. So this is why we have these loops here. Does that make sense?
Sure. I was just thinking if we start iterating from the right side of the array, go to the left, we can keep the same max profit, the same tuple. So we only do a single pass until we reach the end. So that's just a thought. So.
Yeah, no, that's another way of approaching it. I agree. But I'm going to stick with the pseudocode we've made here for now. So I can say max profit equals 0, by cell days equals an empty array. And I want to say, so we talked about either using a for loop or a while loop. Does anyone have any strong feelings about which one we should do?
I would rather use the while loop, because with the while loop we can keep track of the index easier.
Okay.
than with the for loop.
Is that true?
Is it true?
Is the tracking of an index easier with the while loop?
You could use enumerate and then keep track of both the value and the index.
Yeah, so we have a few ways of keeping track of the index. We could use a while loop and make sure that we want to make sure that we're changing the index manually every time. So while index is less than len of prices, then we do stuff, blah, 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 and then index plus equals 1. That's one way of doing it. We could also say for index in range, length of prices. So in that case, we'd be going from 0 to the length of the array, which would give us the index as well. We could also use enumerate. So that would be for the way so that would be that. So we do for index price in enumerate dot, or is it enumerate prices? I believe that's how it works. Am I right about that? So that allows us to loop through it with both the index and the price already saved to variables.
This is actually faster than a while loop because for a developer of Python can talk this particular part. He said enumerate uses internal Python methods, and it's faster rather than a while loop trying to access an index by referencing the price list directly.
So for the remote people, he was saying that according to one of the Python developers, enumerate is actually faster than using just a for loop or a while loop because it utilizes internal Python methods, which actually I did not know. So that sounds like a good what's the word I'm thinking of? Sounds like a good endorsement, so let's stick with that. So we have the index and a price. Also, I should make sure that I'm doing that in the correct order. So I do Python enumerate, make sure it's index and then value as opposed to value then index, because you never know with these things. Yeah. So enumerate, when you enumerate over something. Okay, yeah, so it's index and then the element. Cool. We're all golden there. All right, so for index and price, we're looping over it. Then we have to do another loop. So this is where things get tricky. So we want to loop through everything after this, the current index, right? So what's a way we could do that? So
or index plus 1.
Yeah, so we could do iterate over a slice of this, right? So we could say something like we could call it future index, future price, in enumerate prices, and then we're going from index plus 1 to the end. Seeing something in the chat, want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, okay, that's just more fun stuff. All right, cool. And I just want to make sure the remotes, sometimes I don't see the chat icon, so make sure that if there's a question you have or something like that, either say it out loud or put it in Slack. I have a better chance of seeing it then. All right, so we're looping over that. Then we want to subtract the future price from the current price. So we could call it, profit equals future price minus current price. That's not current price, it's just price. And then we could say if profit is greater than max profit, it's not in caps anymore because we're not pseudocoding. Then we want to set max profit equal to profit. And then we want to set by sell days equals an array of, so it'd be index and future index. And then at the end, we get through this entire loop and we return by sell days. All right, let's run those tests. So I'm gonna make sure I go into the Python dictionary directory, run Stockpicker. We had an error. What's it say? Traceback profit equals.
Phone 6.
Oh, oops. Let's try that again. We had a failure. So it looks like it expected 1 and 4. We got 1 and 2. Anyone see where we went wrong here? Does anyone in the chat see? Nope.
Are you not reading?
So not quite. So
I think its future index is starting at 0. It's not starting after the index of the first price.
yeah, so this thing here is not actually looping through our current indexes. Everything in this loop starts at 0 all over again. So we got to be careful of that. But let's say nobody had noticed that. So how would we, if nobody had noticed that right off the bat, what's your first step? You know, based on what you've been doing so far, on how to figure out where this could go. What would be the first thing you might do? Console.log or print something, right?
Oh,
And so in that case, so yeah, we could say something like, wait a second, why does this keep happening? And then maybe we'd want to say, okay, every time we group through it, we want to print out, print out future index. And then we might see, oh, wait a second, future index starts at 0. We don't want that. The problem is we have to keep on running the program over and over and over again until we can figure that out. There is another option.
Oh, like I know what you're talking about. It's called, like,
PDB.
starts with an E.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard starts with an E, and then what did the person in the remote just say?
PDB.
Actually, PDB.
Yeah, like if you, it's a Python module that allows you to like intersect yourself in the middle of code.
Yeah.
So,
So
like
I haven't actually heard of that particular one, but that is you're on the right track. There is another. So the particular thing I'm thinking of is there is a Python library called Ipython, which has a ton of really, really great tools. So if you haven't already, make sure you run pip install Ipython.
Install it globally.
Yeah, you can install it globally. And then from Ipython, I'm going to import a method called embed. Embed allows us to put break statements into our code. And I can demonstrate to you in just a sec, so let me clear that out. So let's say I could put just run the embed function here. And when I run the code, it'll run up to this point, and then suddenly it stops. And we've kind of opened up into a shell-like environment here. And in this shell, so we can print stuff out. But more importantly, we have access to all of the what's the word I'm thinking of? All of the variables that we've defined up to this point.
Can you edit them once you stop it?
So the embed doesn't let you change the program as you're going, but allows you to see what things are happening. So if I want to see, I can look at max profit. I can look at buy sell days. And I can look at, for example, future index, which is where the problem was, and saw it was 0, when really it should have been 1 because we're starting at 1. So embed is one of the most powerful debugging tools you can have as a developer because it allows you to interrupt yourself and figure out, okay, instead of having to have like a dozen print statements saying print like at this point I am doing this, at this point I am doing this, you can just say, okay, stop the program where you are in this loop. I'm going to learn the state of what's happening at this exact moment. Of course, there is kind of one problem with the way I've done this. If I want to exit, iterate exit, and then it happens again because we're in the middle of a loop and it keeps on hitting that embed statement. And honestly, I don't know if there's a way to just quit everything. Yeah, I don't know. So be careful with your embedding if you're using nested loops, because you may end up in a situation like this where you just need to keep on hitting Control-D until the program quits. And now the test ran, I hit Control-D, and now it's keyboard interrupt. I think I may have broken the shell. Oh, wait, okay, we're good. So embed is a very powerful tool, and it allows us to really get take a very close look at where we are in the program but if you put it in a loop that's running like that, it'll just keep going forever. JavaScript has a very similar program that's actually built in. You don't need a library for it. The keyword for that is debugger. So you type in debugger on a line, it'll automatically pause your program and allow you to interact with it and see what all your variables are set to. So just keep on using these things. I promise that you're like, it's so helpful. Allows you to pause your program mid-thing. Okay.
Is there one of these debuggers that lets you actually edit the variables halfway through? Or not?
I don't know. There probably is, but I don't know. But in general, the purpose of adding one of these debugger keywords is not to change your program to make sure it works. It's just to get a good look of the state of your program.
Okay.
All right, so we have learned both through observation and through our embed thing that we want to make sure that so that looping through it this particular way returns we're looping through a different array with its own indices when we want to make sure we're using the same indices that the original array has. So I just saw something that says height. Hit to the left of the number line code you want to stop at, then you can run the debugger. Ah, cool. So in this particular, anyone have an idea of what we might want to do in this particular case to, since it doesn't look like we can just enumerate like that, like the outer loop. Well, if we're using for, if we're using, yeah. So we could use a regular for loop instead of enumerate, just prices index 1. So this this will actually give us more or less the same issue because this is still giving us returning in a brand new array with its own indices. So in this particular case, a while loop might actually be the most effective thing because we don't want to iterate over a new list. We want to iterate over just a section of a list that's already existing without changing it at all. So we might want to do something like, you know, future index equals index plus 1. And then say, while future index is less than len of prices, then we just need to say profit equals prices future index. And then we just got to make sure that we are actually iterating, increasing future index by 1 every time. So we run it now, let's see what happens. Okay, 1 test passes. Let's add a few more. There's one that has an edge case though. If we're starting at the beginning and the end, let's make sure that one passes as well. So in this case, the lowest price is the first day and the highest price is the last day. So that we're expecting 0 and 8 here. Uh-oh, something went wrong. There we go. So if we run the test again, do they pass? Uh-oh. Ah, thank you. So that's a problem. Don't know why that happened. Okay, still works. All right. So that was our main edge case, is what happens if we get to if they're at the end edges. Looks like that all works. Okay, so what questions do you have about A, this particular challenge, and B, using methods like embed to debug your programs?
I noticed with the running tests, like it gives you the millisecond timing, and you know, it's interesting problems like we talked about with enumerate, where you actually are making a performance enhancement. Is there an easier way, or other than the test file, or to see the impact of how long your test?
Let's look that up, because
I guess I could Google it.
yeah, this seems like a thing we can Google, right? We could say Python, probably be a library of some kind for measuring speed.
It's not going to make a difference in these tiny arrays, but if we're working at Chase and going through a big ass database.
Right. So Stack Overflow sees how to measure the speed of a Python function. And then it says, have a look at the timeit module in Python standard library. This module provides a simple way to time small bits of Python code. There's both a command line interface as well as a callable one. It avoids a number of common traps for measuring execution times. So they have Python-m timeit. Oh, that's actually really cool. So we can run that in the Python shell if we want to, make sure, see how it works. So we import timeit. And then we'd say Python dash, or we could just say, oh, okay. So I think we have to say, looks like it to be something like this. All right, let me try something in that case. I'm going to copy this from the spec file, put it into Stockpicker. And I'm going to write, so the syntax is Python-m timeit, and then the code. Let's see if that works. Oh, okay. So that didn't work exactly right. It says Stockpicker is not defined. At what point? So looks like I was not quite right about how this works.
But that's helpful though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can, okay, so we can also put it into the bucket, like there. So we could import timeit here. And then, so it was timeit.timeit. And then it says takes a number equals, they use 10,000 there, so let's try that out. So probably want to print this whole thing out. All right, so now if we run the file, let's see what happens. Oh, Stockpicker. Why does it keep on looking for Stockpicker? Am I not doing this right? Stockpicker.py. Where is it encountering Stockpicker? Well, I'm running the main file. Yeah. Well, I've never used the timeit library before, so I'm sure there's a lot about it I don't understand yet. But it does look very useful for this kind of thing. If you are worried about just how long it takes to execute and you don't want to run it through a spec file every time. So I would definitely recommend that. Yeah, Python has all kinds of built-in libraries you wouldn't expect that has a lot of functionality. So that's one thing I really like about Python is just that, like, oh, you don't see Python it working in the main thing? Python probably already has a library for that. Any other questions about embed, about Stockpicker? Okay. Right, seeing something in the chat, make sure there's no questions there. Variable Explorer in Spider becomes super useful when you modify large data frames or arrays, hard to see structure in the terminal. Good to know.
Oh yeah, we're discussing like variable explorers in IDE and VS Code extensions. We're just talking about like Spider. The IDE has a really good one.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, VS Code does have a lot of cool libraries you can download as well that allow you to do similar things to what embed does. All right, so in this case, let's take a 10-minute break. Come back at, this will be 10:04, 10:05, let's say 10:05. And we're going to talk about more object-oriented programming.